Okay, let's take a look at the first assignment and go into the assignments. We'll end up having our list of items to work from. And we mentioned the solids. This is from the technical drawing. Let's say the 2014. And the hexahedron, or the cube, the right square, right rectangle, and oblique rectangle, we can all do pretty easily. So size-wise, we don't really care on dimensions, but we do want to take that into account while we're building our geometry. And I haven't launched my SolidWorks yet, so let's go ahead and get that going. The splash screen will tell you what version and what level you're running at. And if something happens, you can always cancel. A lot of the settings will carry over, but not all of them. Things like the titles of the pull downs will be part of the windows, and if they're too unreadable on the video, then I can adjust them, and we'll go from there. So new, again, if you are looking at the novice, you'll see just those three, and you can work with those for the most part. Prefer advanced because we will be making a inch and a metric part file. So I like to double click. You could also hit OK. And we'll work with the command manager. But probably we get into the second or third assignment, we'll start using more of the like the S key and some of the right mouse button items rather than coming up to the command manager all the time. All right, so to start our sketching, I do like to see the origin, all right, because that's going to be one of our visual clues. So as we start the sketching, we're going to start relying on those visual clues of the origin in blue gives me one piece of information. If I pick the front plane, the top plane, or the right plane, those would be my sketching planes. And if we come over to the command manager and go into sketch, I can click on sketch and it will ask me. I'm big on pre-selecting this, so I probably won't do this more than a couple of times, and I will be into my right-click habits. All right, so the front plane is just as good as any for this. With the hex, we could have started on the top. You just have to decide the orientation where you're comfortable sketching from. So my command manager, or my taskbar is set to auto collapse, but it wasn't auto collapsing, so had something open there. Want to be able to go across the bottom and see what we're in inch, pounds, and seconds. The origin turns red, and whenever we're looking at this origin, the long leg is vertical, the short leg is horizontal. That's going to help with our orientation. As we're navigating around the screen, holding down the middle mouse button is going to rotate. Or to get back into position, I can hit the space bar, and we did a little bit of this earlier. If you want to see the box, you can pick on the box, or we'll just tell it to go into the front view. As you're learning these, as you hover over the box, it's going to show you front control 1, the back control 2, left is control 3, right is control 4, top is control 5, and the bottom is control 6, isometric control 7, and normal 2 control 8. Normal 2 requires that you have something selected for it to be functional. So I've hit control 1 to be back in the front plane, and as we start out, we'll probably do a lot of our sketches in the front plane just to get started. All right, so I always like to draw the first block with a line so we can start looking at relations. As soon as I click on the line command in my sketching tool, so line, circle, don't do too much with splines just yet. We would probably prefer a rectangle, but on our first go around, we will use some of those relations and geometries to build our square. 3-point arc, the ellipses, slots, the polygons, and fillets. Points and text come in a little bit later, and then we have modifying tools as we go. As soon as I click on the line, the property manager switches to the second tab, and we are in insert line as sketched. We can force it to be horizontal, vertical. For construction is the same as a center line, so kind of use those interchangeably. Infinite length, we'll use those a little later on. Midpoint, probably not as common, but it is a useful tool. And then as I'm dragging around the screen, you're going to see inference lines. So the blue pops up and says I am in a vertical orientation to the origin, or I'm horizontal, vertical, horizontal. We'll also see yellow inference lines that will pick up things like tangency or parallelism, some of those other relations. So at this stage, we're looking for terminology. And then I wish my little yellow box was a little bit bigger, but that is showing me that I'm coincident to the origin. So as you drag across that and it highlights in yellow, it's going to infer that relation. If it was white background, then you would be in position, but you wouldn't get an automatic inference. So one of the things, our first rule, is that our sketch needs to be related to the origin in some form or fashion. So if I left click and hold down, I drag, well, pretty much any direction to start, and I'm going to see those little yellow boxes popping up that are going to tell me horizontal, vertical, horizontal, and vertical. So depending on what you want to end up with, I'm not really paying attention. I'm about 2 inches 040 at 180 degrees. If I let go, then I see the preview, and I can use the scroll wheel to zoom up a little bit, or scroll the other way to zoom out. All right, so that was the click drag method. That is my preference. The click click is to select a point, come out some distance, and I've let go of the mouse button, so now I'm going to do the second click and place the geometry. So one advantage of the click click is it's going to be in continuous, kind of a continuous mode, and drag does too, but it doesn't necessarily start that line again. All right, so as soon as I complete the rectangle, or my square in this case, and the region and the contour shows up, so the shaded sketch contours kind of color in that region, then we have completed one of the requirements to build a solid. All right, so if I right click, well, let's go over to the property manager just real quick. So parameters, you can enter those values, but for the most part, we're going to stay away from the parameters. They return a kind of a quick measurement, but for the most part, they're not going to. It's not something that I want to enter into the system. The dimensions will take care of that. All right, so I can OK out of it, or right click and select. I am heavy on the right mouse button, so right clicking and select, or we can come up to the title bar and our standard menu and go to select that way. That just returns us to a ready state. All right, so at this point I can grab an endpoint, left click, hold down, and as I'm rubber banding this endpoint around, I'll see those inference lines pop up. And then when I get close to the origin, it'll make a little jump and show me that I'm coincident. As soon as I make it coincident, my blue lines go to black, and now that point shows up with the little green box that says that coincidence has been applied, and in the property manager I will see that relation of coincidence. So in the process of drawing these lines, I have inferred vertical, I've inferred horizontal, And one of the things to note is if for some reason these inferences are not occurring automatically, there is a setting that turns this off, and it doesn't happen very often, but it's annoying when it gets turned off. All right, so at this point, if I drag, I'm still able to rubber band around that point. If I grab something that's in a vertical relation, then it can only move up and down, horizontal, left or right. So I need to come up with a dimension, and that is force of habit. My fingers were ahead of my mouth again. If we come up to the command manager and go to the smart dimension, I can first pick a line, and we'll just go 2 inches, and my hexahedron, my cube, is going to be 2 by 2 by 2. So not sure why, it must be a 2021 that my, there it goes. They kind of grayed out on me there, so I will put in 2. And now, since I have those dimensions, that point is not able to move. The dimensions are now driving the geometry, and the relations are supplying the location to the origin and the orientation of each of the objects. All right, so a lot of terminology, a lot to go with, and we're ready to make a solid. So one quick note about the shaded sketch contours: if I don't want to see that, I can turn them off and turn them on. We'll use those a little bit more when we get into nesting and having overlapping geometries possibly to contend with. All right, so our feature, once I switch to the features tab on the command manager, this is going to be an extruded boss base. All right, and if I grab onto the arrow, I can drag it and determine which way I want it to go. Doesn't really matter, in most cases it doesn't matter if it is coming towards us or moving away from us. At some point when we're thinking about the orientation of this part in an assembly, we may want to have it go a certain direction so that it makes it easier to perform the assembly. All right, so coming over to my value, I'll type in the 2 inches, hit OK, and it goes from yellow to a gray. Things now see the blue origin, and we're going to call this good for our first solid geometry. So I'm going to save it. I need a location. Desktop should be all right. If we're doing the Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive, then we would want to go ahead and set up a new folder. So if I were to make this my 2021 something that is descriptive enough, so fall, and would like a space in there, right? And then this will be another new folder for assignment 1. So the sooner you kind of are organizing your models and keeping the geometry, so we'll go with the simple term cube 1 and save. It will save you some headaches later on. What I really don't want to see is all of this semester's projects dumped into one folder and kind of a mess. So let's end this one here, and we'll pick up with more geometry.